My name is Ruby Maddox, and I am the co-founder of Leaders of the Free World. And welcome to From Peace Corps to Social Entrepreneur. It is our webinar this evening that is kicking off our webinar series that is Black Men in International Leadership. And so we thank you for giving up a part of your evening to be with us here, and we appreciate it. So really briefly, we just want to mention this is a collaboration between the Leaders of the Free World, the New Jersey City University, the Office of Global Affairs, and also University of Delaware, as well as our panelists organizations that they'll talk more about. But our goal tonight is to talk about, why this topic is so important to us, and I'll get into that. But the Leaders of the Free World mission, for those of you who don't know what we are, what we do, maybe you just seen this somewhere, we are an international, an organization that focuses on international experiences and leadership development for young Black men. We believe that these types of experiences offer life transforming opportunities, and also using that moment of international experience to really lean into what that can teach us about leadership, and developing into the type of leaders that we need to see in the world. And our philosophy is on helping students be able to not only see the world, but see a different parts of themselves. Our mission and how it actually sort of articulated word for word is to cultivate leaders who are globally minded, self-aware, and service-driven. And so that's a big part of what we do and how it's related to this series. This webinar series, Black Men in International Leadership, is not only obviously pushing what our mission is about, but also really pushing what does it mean, on the other side, what opportunities are out there, and what are the international leadership positions that are possible for a lot of our students who come through the program. The vision that we have for our program is to have more, obviously, young men going abroad, but to have different schools in all parts of the US being able to send their students through the Leaders of the Free World program, especially those students who are in community colleges and that don't have a lot of programs like ours. And so that's part of the partnership program that we are doing now, and bringing different schools in so that they can work with us and collaborate with us to send their students out. Cool. So what you'll hear today and what this is about, why you all gave up part of your evening to be here with us, is obviously the stories of our panelists talking about their journeys from being a Peace Corps volunteer to starting their own ventures, and what that was like, and what they learned along the process. The outcomes for this project is that you all get that insight about what is possible, but also, what's needed in this field, and what's needed in that pipeline. What were the experiences of our panelists that helped get them there, and how you all either might take from that, duplicate that, and kind of run with that. And so if you are a young Black man in this group, if you're a student, we want you to be able to walk away from this webinar with the understanding of what is possible, what opportunities are out there for you, the advice that you'll hear from the panelists, and all of that stuff. And if you're an administrator and you're here on the line, then we want you to also pay attention to, what our panelists say about what works, right? In their experience, what were the things that helped them along that journey? What were the things that made it difficult? What are the things that could be changed maybe in your own institutions to make more pathways like this possible? And so, yeah. And I'm going to turn it over to LeVar.
Thank you, Ruby, and welcome again, everyone. My name is LeVar Thomas. I am co-founder, along with Ruby, of Leaders of the Free World. And for this particular section, we're going to talk about why social entrepreneurship matters. And when I thought about what social entrepreneurship means to me in thinking about overall impact, a few of these ideas came to mind, where you're looking at how do you find answers to difficult questions? And that's the cool thing about social entrepreneurship, is that you're looking at problems in the world, and you are no longer seeing yourself as a spectator, but you want to be a part of the change that you wish to see with these problems. So social entrepreneurship allows us to think about solutions to problems in the world that we want to solve, think about alternatives to things that we've always thought about, or we always struggle with in terms of wanting to address. And social entrepreneurship gives that. It also allows us to utilize innovative ideas to drive sustainable solutions. And we're going to discuss a lot of that during the panel where we speak about our Peace Corps service. But for me, that was really kind of the classroom for understanding how, one, difficult it is to be a social entrepreneur, and the glamour that also goes around it. But it's hard to solve real problems, and it's gratifying when you know that the work that you're doing, the efforts around issue areas that you might be passionate about, you can be a part of that solution. The third thing is creating social value by meeting the needs of others. So you're thinking about how we can meet the needs of others, whether it's environmental, health, tax, education, whatever industry that you're a part of, thinking about how can you make a difference. And the last thing is prioritizing impact of the community, society, and the larger world. And that's what kind of encompasses social entrepreneurship, and kind of why we're all here today. We're trying to make an impact in our community and from our own capacity, whether it be in our own backyard or around the world. So we're going to be touching on these themes throughout the panel. And I'll turn it back over to you, Ruby.
Awesome. Thank you. So this will just give you a breakdown of our agenda for this evening. Obviously, we've done a little bit of introductions, but you'll hear first a snippet from each of our panelists talking about their experience, their journey, what was it like when they were working as a volunteer, and then what is the venture that they're involved in now, and what that does. And so this is the order of our panel. Then we'll have a discussion kind of round table where we ask a bunch of questions to the panelists before turning it over to the audience and you all being able to ask questions. Yeah. And if you have questions now, before we start, just go ahead and type that into the chat and we will come back to that. So I will turn it over to our first panelist, Jerome Moore, who will talk about his experience. And yeah.
I appreciate it, Ruby, and thank you and LeVar for this opportunity to be here and share my story, and hopefully influence some people and also inform some people. I was born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee, as I mentioned in the chat. The best city in the world, but also in the zip code that I went to school in and born in, 37208, also has the highest incarceration rate in the country as well, which I had no idea growing up in Nashville, but that really created a lot of barriers that were there. Growing up very segregated community, and now knowing that Nashville is not all Black. As I matured and got a better understanding of just the social, economic, demographic and landscape of the city I'm a product of. And so I had no idea about Peace Corps growing up. I didn't have anybody in my immediate family or my immediate community that had international experiences or any type of representation that would guide me to do anything like Peace Corps. I was just blessed with the curiosity to just want to just get out and escape and find out about different cultures, different places in the world that I could potentially learn from, but also, give myself to in any type of way in capacity that I could. And so, thanks to good old Google, I came across Peace Corps because I was broke, didn't have any money, so I couldn't just, go get up and just, go backpacking around the world, or I didn't have the parents that had the finances to just give me the money. So I needed something that was like financially beneficial, or financially going to cover that cost for me to be able to garner the experiences that I was looking for. And Peace Corps was able to do that. I can definitely say without Peace Corps, I would not be doing what I'm doing now. As you can see, I served in Paraguay. And I served in the city. Paraguay is right below Brazil. Of people who may not know, they speak two languages. They speak Spanish and they speak an indigenous language called Guarani, which I know very little about, remember anyway, but I was focusing on the Spanish. So I was able to become fluent, professionally fluent in Spanish during my time there, which is one of the other goals, aspirations that I wanted to do, being able to truly immerse myself and live outside of the United States. And during my time in Peace Corps, I was able to work with small businesses, gyms. I was able to work with just people on the grounds and do a real needs assessment. again, when I got there, I did not know any Spanish, so it was definitely that language barrier. But you know, I was prepared and willing to go through that, and it made me a better person. But you know, at the time I was 20, 24, 25 years old. And so, you know, I was still a very young man growing and maturing, and Peace Corps helped me grow and mature more. I was able to, you know, get lifetime friends, build lifetime community, and just learn about kind of how to build communities, and not through my lens, but, you know, really tap into, you know, what community believes they need, and not just coming in because I might have more education or whatever and saying, hey, you know, doing a real needs assessment and building relationships, right? And that's what it's all about at the end of the day. And I was able to build some awesome relationships doing my Peace Corps service. And, you know, I never thought I could live outside the country, learn another language. It was nothing there in my immediate community to promote that and say that's you can do that. That's possible. So me being able to do that was just a feat in itself, but also more importantly, taking it back to my community here in Nashville and building something off of it. And after that, Peace Corps, I was able to go and live in Puerto Jimenez, Costa Rica for a year, doing community economic development. I was able to go to the Philippines and Bacolod, Philippines, and do some community economic development there and work with organizations. And just recently returned back from China, from living there for 2 years in Xiamen, China, in 2019, right before the pandemic hit in December. And I thought I escaped, but I didn't, because it came in the United States just a few months after. But if it wasn't for Peace Corps, I wouldn't be able to garner those experiences and know how to navigate those spaces and just grow, learn about myself as an American, learn about myself being a Black American abroad, and kind of how to navigate those things, right? Which is a whole different segment, a whole different panel. But with that, you know, I was able to start Community Changers, which, you know, I feel like I'm a swagged out person. I'm a person that believes, you know, there's a lot of good community projects out there, but sometimes, you know, they get lost because community work is so, you know, it's in the mud, it's out the dirt. And, you know, I wanted to create something that added a little more shine, added a little more coolness to community economic development. And, you know, started making content that help people, help community members recognize the power that they have to change their community. And I'm all about building power. I think that's, you know, we learned in Peace Corps sustainability, and building power is sustainable. I don't want to help you. I don't want to assist you. I want to help you build. And so that's what Community Changes does. And I've been able to, you know, start podcasts, as you can see there, you know, deep dish conversations, talking about social and economic issues here in Nashville, specifically over great pizza. And I never have a guest turn me down, because who doesn't want free pizza? And I have community projects where I highlight amazing projects all over the world. That's been kind of on hold because of the pandemic, but being able to share the backgrounds and stories of community members all over the world, and the positive impactfulness they've had on the community through, you know, their work. And I have Black Americans Making the Mark Stories Abroad, which is a podcast that shares the stories of Black Americans who have formerly or currently living abroad. So I can help those people that was like me, that didn't know it was possible, right? That they can do it. And just recently, I created the Black Youth Abroad curriculum that targets specifically Black youth in the United States and young adults, to introduce them to social and economic opportunities beyond the United States. So yeah, I'm all about giving it back. I have my motto is change yourself, change your community, change your world. And I'm trying to do that here in Nashville, and hopefully spread that type of energy all over the world. And you know, I wouldn't always the man that you see here today, and it took a lot of growth, but, you know, being able to leave the United States and garner different perspectives and change my lens, and also just know what's possible beyond just my community, really helped me a lot. And I appreciate Peace Corps for giving me that experience, but, you know, and I'm also like just appreciative of everybody around me in my community that's helped me build and get to this point. So I look forward to sharing more, and but that's me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jerome. Awesome. Next, we're going to hear from Mr. Thomas, talking about his Peace Corps experience in Rwanda.
Thank you, Jerome, for sharing your story. I definitely experienced a lot of the same things as well. Growing up in the Brownsville section in Brooklyn, I didn't know anyone who did Peace Corps or who had the opportunity to live in another country for that extended amount of time and having that level of impact. So for me, it wasn't something that I knew was even possible. I've had the opportunity to visit Spain, Italy, and France in high school, a part of this 1 week exchange program. So that was really my introduction into international experiences. But it really was my last semester in college when I was still trying to figure out whether I go to grad school or whether I will work, and trying to figure out that transition process. When my advisor at the time, or exactly who's actually on the call as well, she told me about her experience in the Peace Corps in Jordan, and how she fell in love with the experience, and she learned Arabic, and how that experience basically transformed her life and her interest in Middle Eastern politics. And for me, I was like, whoa, that's really cool. You know, typically people are graduating and they're going on to grad school or they're working, but I thought that was a really unique journey, and I wanted to create my own path the same way. So that led me to apply to the Peace Corps. And fast track, a year later, I was notified that I was going to Rwanda, East Africa, as a community health volunteer. So you can imagine a kid from Brooklyn going into the rural village of the Western province of Rwanda and experiencing that culture shock. But it was really eye-opening for me, because that's when I realized how hard social change really is. Um, as Jerome mentioned, I did the community needs assessment and assessing what were some of the key issues in my community, and malaria and malnutrition were among one of the big issues in my village. So I had to learn the local language, Kinyarwanda, which was extremely hard. But as a health volunteer, I had to the intermediate speaking level to be able to communicate with members of my community, because no one spoke English. So that within itself was really hard. Um, and I think Peace Corps has this way about the program that brings out the best of you, where situations where you think you won't be able to make it through, somehow you find your way actually doing it. So once I started learning the language and building relationships in my community, started making more friends and getting outside of my comfort zone, and really seeing the big need for malnutrition. At the local health center, I was working with mothers who had children on the malnutrition program, and it was truly eye-opening to see that the limited access that they had to healthy food. So most of my work during my time in the Peace Corps was helping to create access to healthy foods by providing kitchen garden training, and really giving these mothers the power to create the change they wish to see. And it was truly transformative for me, because watching those mothers kind of do the work and invest in the process really showed me a lot about um, what impact really is about, and helping me to get out of my own way of thinking I can go into a new environment with my own solutions and make a difference. I learned very quickly in my Peace Corps service that that's not how change works. And it really began happening as I started engaging my community members and community leaders, and listening to the issues on the ground of what they were experiencing and what change they wanted to see, and supporting them in the process. So the image in the bottom left is some of the harvest that were reaped from the kitchen garden trainings that we did in the village. We did one training at the community center, and then we went out into more areas where there were higher rates of malnutrition. And the last image on the right-hand corner is of the Akila Women's Institute, which is a women's empowerment group in Rwanda. And we did a lot of leadership development trainings and working with them to help empower them, that they can go after their dreams and they can have an impact in their own communities. So Peace Corps for me really showed me what was possible. It helped me to get out of my comfort zone and to dream bigger, and to realize that impact can be done at a global scale. But after my Peace Corps service, I wanted to create an opportunity that would allow access for other young Black males like myself to have a transformative experience. And I connected with Ruby, and we were able to kind of bring our passions and interests together to create Leaders of the Free World. And we can go to the next slide. And as Ruby had alluded to early on, Leaders of the Free World is an international organization that provides leadership development programming and to young Black men. And why this is so important is because I didn't have examples of other Black males who were traveling, who were having impact, who wanted to change the world at this level. And LFW helps the students within the program to rewrite the narrative of what's possible. It gives them a framework that, one, they can have a passport and they can travel and they can gain a cross-cultural experience, but they can also be surrounded by like-minded peers who are all pushing the envelope of what's possible, of dreaming big, of wanting to create community impact. And the first picture on the right, it's us and Donna having a reflection session. And every morning we would meet on the balcony and we would talk about issues from identity, race, leadership, entrepreneurship, some of the challenges, looking at the emotional health and mental health of each of the fellows, and really creating a community and a brotherhood and a bond that allow them to feel like with the community that they were a part of and the resources and the mentorship, they could achieve and become anything. And the second picture, that's us in Egypt back in 2018. And it was truly a powerful experience where many of our students were like, I never thought I would be here. This is like mind blowing and a dream come true. And the last image is of us in Cape Coast, where we attended the slave castle where the slave trade took place, and learning about the history and walking through that space was truly mind blowing and profound and transformative at the same time. So through the work of what we're doing at LFW, it really, the seeds for that work was planted in Peace Corps and realizing that all of this couldn't be possible if you can dream, if you can have the right resources and access to opportunities. And that's what we're doing with LFW. So on that note, I will turn it over to Terrence to speak about his service.
Thank you for that, Brother LeVar. I appreciate. I'm super honored that you all are giving me this opportunity to share my story and hopefully impact someone in the audience. I've always admired the work of LFW. I grew up in Springfield, Massachusetts, and born and raised, and I headed on over to, I went to Clark Atlanta University for my undergrad, and going into Clark Atlanta, I first of all, I didn't even think, I never even thought, just to echo what Jerome and LeVar were mentioning, it never even crossed my mind that I could ever go overseas, let alone get a job working overseas and like doing something that was impactful and meaningful overseas. But I came into Clark Atlanta University wanting to be a politician. My goal was, I'm going to Clark Atlanta, I'm gonna major in political science. When I graduate, I'm gonna come back and be the mayor of Springfield. Then you get into undergrad and you realize political science isn't really a major that's needed to be in politics, and then you actually learn what politics is. And I slowly but surely just kept losing interest in that passion and just started rethinking other ways that I can make an impact in this world. And senior year, I was freaking out because I'm about to graduate. After you graduate, you got 6 months before you got to start paying back these loans. I don't know what job I can get with this political science degree. I didn't do enough networking during my time here, so I don't got any paid internships lined up or anything like that. So I was really losing it. And rest in peace to Dr. Kelso, one of my professors. He heard my vent, he heard my cries, and he brought me to the Peace Corps office. There's a little corner office in the basement of our financial aid department that I never recognized until he introduced me to the staff there, and they gave me the rundown on the opportunity. And even after that whole information dump, I was just like, the more and more they kept talking, I was like, I can't do that. That's a waste of time. Yeah, I'm gonna do this long application and I'm gonna put in all this effort and get all these shots, and they still gonna say no? Nah, I ain't doing that. How many people apply? Thousands? Nah. I'm cool. I'm all right. But I did, gratefully, I had mentors on campus and individuals that I looked up to, that wouldn't dare let me doubt myself, and challenged me to go for opportunities like this. And I applied. I made sure it was as perfect as possible when I submitted it. And within a month later, I was told I was going to Rwanda, and I went to right after, like literally, I graduated. I graduated in the middle of May. 2 weeks later, I'm on a plane in Philly, headed meeting LeVar and the rest of the crew, and we're headed to Rwanda. I had no time to process and get myself ready. Like, I'm going to Africa. So it really all happened kind of fast. And my experience was, man, I'm trying to think of a more immaculate word for eye-opening, but really that's in a nutshell what it was. I had no idea what I was capable of and what was possible for what I can do in this world until I went into this program. And they brought me over there to do a task, but I ended up doing multiple. And it taught me that not to limit myself. When it comes to social change, I've always been someone who's interested in community organization and civic engagement. And even since I was a teenager, I've been running young nonprofits and community centers and events in my neighborhood. And it's always been about giving and giving and giving. But like LeVar had mentioned before, real social change is teaching them how to do it themselves, and so that they can be sustainable after you leave. And just showing up and giving and giving, giving things that that don't necessarily provide the people with the tools they need to continue on. Isn't really quality service. And that's a lot of the work that we were doing there in Peace Corps. And I think one of these pictures, you see me building my first permagarden, and I learning how to farm, and and teaching the ones in the village how to conduct their own. And the same thing with these different innovative ways of washing your hands and restoring water, and everything that just kind of makes their lives a lot easier. And just the world of education was just screaming at me. I had my first teaching experience in Rwanda. I'm a teacher now. My first classroom experience teaching was in a Rwandan village, and that's where I found my passion for education. And I just learned that if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. You teach him how to fish, he'll never go hungry. And that quote just kind of stuck with me, and it's what kind of pushed me to keep going for education. So even when I came back from Rwanda, and I came back to the States because I wanted to continue my education, I continued to chase that passion for education, whether I was going to do it traditionally or non-traditionally. I felt I had some things to teach to the world, and I was willing to teach it to whoever was willing to listen. And I went about it the traditional way. I got my degree. I got my master's degrees and my advanced degrees and all the certificates and licenses you could think of. And even and then as I'm getting more and more embedded in my education, I'm learning that of these key problems that just keep sticking out to me. And one of them was literacy. And because growing up, I loved to read. But I didn't read much independently because I could never find books that related to me, that related to my life and the storylines that I'm familiar with. And I'm very embedded in the African American culture. So and I'm not, and so I mainly watch movies and TV shows that with characters and storylines that relate to me. And talking to the rest of the people in my community, I learned that they also gravitate towards literature when there's characters and storylines that relate to them. And that was part of the reason why there was such a literacy problem in our Black and Brown communities in Springfield, Mass. So last summer during the pandemic, with all this time on my hands, I came up with the idea of Diaspora Strong. And I thought, there's there's a lot of these bookstores that were closing down because of the pandemic, and there was a lot of libraries that were not being used, that were just giving away books, and some were just throwing them away. So I went to a lot of these different spaces and I collected these books and I sorted through them to find storylines and characters and authors that were Black and Brown. And I brought that collection to several different locations throughout Springfield, Mass. One was at a cafe, another was at a dispensary, and another was at a marketplace. And every location, we aim to expose this diverse literature to our people in hopes that it would interest them in reading. And this is just one of the few things. This is one of the small steps that we're taking in Diaspora Strong to enhance the reading culture in Black and Brown communities, and slowly but surely get to increase that literacy development that we struggle with so much right now. We're using the profits from our bookstore at dsbookstore.org so we can put together flashcard games that help improve a child's literacy at home, and other innovative materials and projects and events, and hopefully one day an after-school program with the theme of centered around reading, creative reading and writing. And all those profits come from dsbookstore.org and our other fundraising efforts. So I'm really excited to see what I do with Diaspora Strong, but I know that I would not have reached this. I wouldn't have reached this particular idea with Diaspora Strong, and felt and discovered this passion that I have for teaching and learning had I not had this international experience in Rwanda.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Terrence. So
Thank you.
thank you all three of you for sharing that. And so now I've been pretty excited to get to this part two in terms of just the discussion. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and we're going to turn it over to the panelists, and we'll highlight that for you all to be able to see. And so I have a couple questions I'm going to ask of all of you, and just digging deeper into the stories that you shared and the journeys that you talked about. And so when you think about currently where you are and what you're doing, and I know you all semi-touched on this, but what was it in your experiences that you feel most prepared you for the work that you're doing right now, growing your social entrepreneurship venture? No particular order.
I would say the ability to make decisions despite fear. And I think that's one of the things that Peace Corps taught me. I was terrified to leave my job at the time, to leave the comfort of normalcy, to go into a new environment and have to start over, learn a new language, learn a new culture, learn how to, whether my identity in the United States would be accepted in Rwanda, and really thinking about what life would be like. And in social entrepreneurship, especially with Leaders of the Free World, it's doing things despite fear. It's taking action and wondering, will this work out? Will this not work out? Will it make us look crazy?
I think just being able to get out inside the United States gave me all the confidence in the world that I could do anything. After that, once I left Nashville, went to Miami and flown into Paraguay. Once I landed, and once I got amongst other people that had also had like these experiences before me, and this was my first time, and I sized everybody up, like, okay, all right, I can do this, and I can do it at a high level anywhere around the world now. And now at this point now, I'm thinking I'm unstoppable. There's no boundaries, and I'm gonna be a problem to deal with. And my thing was, once I did that, now because my entrepreneurship mindset was going, it was like, well, okay, how can I take this once I finish and create my own lane, right? Which took a little more time to figure out, but I was thinking, my wheels were turning, like, well, how can I use my experience and leverage it in a way that I can create something that's unique and built around who I am as a person and where I come from and what I identify with, right? And so once that happened, it was beast mode after that. And I'm beasting every day.
I love it. I like how you said unstoppable and just like no boundaries. Just awesome. How about you, Terrence?
I'm gonna reiterate what I mentioned before. If you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. If you teach him how to fish, he'll never go hungry. When we were in Rwanda, Peace Corps was not the only group of Americans that were in this developing country, helping it to develop. Everybody, there were numerous churches and missionary groups and other nonprofits and maybe like one other federal government program, and from other countries. But everybody had their hands in on helping Rwanda develop. And I would imagine it was the same in Paraguay, and it's the same when you go to these other developing countries. There's always these other groups all helping the country, but they all go about it in a different way. And what I noticed from the other groups, as opposed to Peace Corps, was a lot of them was just giving, and they was donating a lot. They were giving buildings, they were giving money, they were just giving money. They're just making it rain. But what I loved about Peace Corps was that they had this concept of training trainers and aiming for sustainability, self-sustainability, because they realized that me and LeVar and all our other colleagues, we're not going to be there forever. So we're not going to be here forever to do these perma gardens for you. We're not going to be here forever to do these malaria prevention methods. We're not going to be here forever to circulate this knowledge of family planning and contraception. Somebody has to pick up the candle. So a lot of our mission was training the locals on this information and the use of these resources and materials. So when we left, they themselves can continue to push that knowledge forward to their own people, and giving them those tools. And that's something that's how I'm going to run my business. And I'm not just going to keep giving books, hoping that the kids are going to read. I want to. There's a lot of parents in my community who have children who struggle with reading and writing, and I want to give them the tools to feel powerful enough to go about to take action in their own house, assisting with that child's literacy development through a series of different use of materials, and also just being trained by someone with that proper knowledge. So I got that model from my experience in Peace Corps. Also the networking, I can't not mention all the amazing people I got to meet while I was there. I got to see so many different styles of lessons and unit plans, and I got to see so many different ways on how to make a project, and how to make it successful, and how to write a grant, and just so many resources was funneling through that Peace Corps, and I left with so many friendships and individuals that I still connect with till today.
Cool, thank you. And sorry y'all for that glitch, not sure what happened. And so a question I have, like, what role do you feel that your identity as a Black man played in your experience, you know, starting from the Peace Corps level on through?
I went to Rwanda, which I believe is Central Africa, right, Lamar? Or East, Central, East?
East.
Central.
East Africa.
Mhm.
I'm thinking I'm going to Africa and everybody's just gonna love me. They're gonna embrace me. I'm going with all these white people. Like they gonna love me. I don't know about them. They're gonna love me. In my village. And I get to these communities, and you notice that there's a different way that they look at you than how they look at your colleagues. And I've had a lot of difficult identity questions like, where are you from? And why don't you know where in Africa you're from? And like, I see that you have African roots in you, but where are you from in Africa? And trying to explain slavery to them, and trying to explain the displacement of my ancestors. And they didn't keep records for slaves during that period. And so that caused a lot of identity questions. And so just I got to clearly see the difference between being African American and being African. And I started to develop slowly but surely like my own sense of identity and how I prefer to be identified, and not letting others identify me for me, but how I like to be called and seen in certain spaces, and just standing up for myself more and speaking when people misidentify me.
Awesome, thank you. What about you all?
Yeah, this is a lot to unpack, right? This is a lot to unpack, right? For me, I never had a problem of like, I guess an identity, trying to identify who I was and my Blackness internally, but it was definitely eye-opening when you leave the United States and you realize that people really don't know much about you outside of what they're seeing in propaganda, right? And so you get those stereotypes, and it's enlightening, right? In so many ways, because like in my instance, it was my first time abroad, and some of these things that you're learning that Terrence spoke on, like you can't really read in a book, right? You have to kind of live these experiences, and then you start to develop other perspectives and extrapolate on those in different ways about like, dang, what does it mean to be a Black American, or being American, and not even being identified as an American because of your Blackness in some countries, right? And so it really let me dive in a more like academia way, and kind of want to do my own research and have these different conversations about what other people are learning. And so once I did that, I got another experience of being Black in Costa Rica, and then a whole nother experience of being Black in China, right? And so it's really interesting, but like just like through my podcast, Black Americans Making the Mark Stories Abroad, you learn that all Black folks have different Black experiences, right? And you learn that I might have a different Black experiences being American, being in Rwanda, being a Latinx, Afro Latino, Afro Brazilian, Afro Paraguayan, right? We all have these different Black experiences, which is interesting for being a Black American, because we as American, we can think the world centers around us, and everybody's experience, especially if you have the same color as us, is the same, and it's not, right? And so you learn that, which is very interesting, and it's needed, because then you can better understand other persons that are of color, that are Black around the world, and they can better understand you. We can start building those relationships and debunking those misconceptions that we may have about one another because of propaganda. And so so that was great, and that's why I encourage so many Black folks to leave in general, because you learn so much more about your Blackness and what other people think about your Blackness once you go beyond the United States. And people like I think the motherland, the continent of Africa, is one of the best examples, because we may think, depending on what country you go through, you're gonna get all this Black love and get these Black superpowers because you're Black on the motherland, but that might not be the case depending on what country on the continent that you go to. You might not even be considered Black. It just depends. And also, like culture is also intellectual. So you might be Black in skin color, but they might see you, oh, well, you're Americanized, you're white mentally, right? So it's a lot of, but you learn this through conversations that you have with folks outside of your home country, and people that look the same but just have different experiences. So it's been amazing.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you both hit the nail on the head for me. And I think similar to Terrence's experience, like I was the first Black American in my village. So I would get statements like, you don't sound like the rappers we hear in the music videos. Why do you speak like, someone told me, like, you speak like the white man. I'm like, what does that even mean? And it was challenging because having my West Indian Caribbean roots, and I'm working for, this American organization, and I go to in my village and they say, okay, you're this Black American, but where your parents from? Where your grandparents from? They must be from Rwanda because you look like us. And I'm like, I don't think I'm from Rwanda. I know my parents grew up in Guyana. I'm like, oh, but your grandfather, he must be from Rwanda. And I'm like, I don't think so. And having that constant back and forth gets exhausting, because as I'm learning the language and I'm trying to, serve in my community, even to a certain extent, my language is being questioned because I look like those in my community. There's a subconscious expectation that I'm supposed to know the language. It's like they expect me to communicate, and a white volunteer could say the same exact word that I say. And they're like, oh my gosh, like you're fluent to that person. And like, why don't you get it? Like to me. So there's this subconscious expectation, given my skin color, that I think played into the identity, of me navigating as a Peace Corps volunteer. And it made me ask questions like, what does it even mean to be an American? Like in asking all these things about identity, because when they see me, they they don't necessarily see the American privilege that being American comes with. They're questioning that and they're pushing that. And I think to a deeper level, it's like, of course, we all learn about slavery. We all learn about the history of the slave trade and things like that from like an intellectual standpoint. But when you're being confronted by the reality of that system, somehow it's like still hard to believe for them in the village. And they're like, I don't get it. Like, why don't you speak this language, or why don't you know this? So it really took patience. It took understanding. It took me having to stop being upset and reactive, and kind of just take it like, they're learning, they're understanding, and meeting, finding commonality in that experience. So I think with the identity side of things, it was a struggle, but it helped me to learn more about myself and cross-cultural engagement.
Awesome.
Can I just add something there real quick? See, and that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important that we travel more. Because the more we travel and we show up in that light and in those spaces, we change that narrative that of what they perceive the African American man to be around the world. Because like just like LeVar said, like if you go in the village, the few places you do see a TV and they're watching American content, and though most of the times when you see Black people on that screen, it's in forms of entertainment. And not to knock the work that Black people have accomplished in the world of entertainment, but that's all they see. So then when we get there, that they're expecting me to act like I'm in a Rick Ross, Chris Brown video. I got students calling me by the N-word and whatnot. So they get such a unilateral view of what it is to be a Black man in America. But the more we travel, the more we show them in these different programs and spaces, it starts to change the narrative.
And I think that's an awesome segue into the next question, which is like, what advice would you have for other young Black men who are trying to follow in you all's footsteps, both from just trying to find opportunities to gain international experience and also, you know, and building your own venture after that. Like, what advice would you have for anyone trying to follow in your footsteps?
I'll lead it off. Well, I would say one, go ahead and take that leap. You know, you got to just take that leap first, you know. And there's a lot that come with that, right? They're going to be people who don't understand why you need to go abroad, you know, which is kind of toxic. And it might be the closest people to you. Because, you know, speaking from my experience, when you have nobody that has had those experiences and understands like the social capital you can gain, the experience and how it can benefit you in the long run, and they might not understand why you need to make such a move or do such a move. But you got to fight through that and just believe that like it's something you need to do and something you want to do in your heart and just follow through with it. And if you might be like me and maybe in Terrence and LeVar, maybe financially you don't have it either to do it, you know, and I know we'll get to that, but you know, just use Google, use it and find those opportunities, but don't stop looking for them. And if you don't have the people in your immediate community or in your family, like go to the internet, reach out, use Facebook, use whatever mediums you got to use, try to get the answers, because that was me. Like that was me. Like I just come from an environment, a socioeconomic environment where like people, you know, we thugging it out. You know, it ain't no thinking about going abroad. What? You know, but now when I tell my people like, yeah, you know, I was in China, I've been in China for 2 years. They bragging on me all the time. They can't wait to tell somebody they know somebody that lived in China, lived in Paraguay, lived in Costa Rica, and we come from on the same block. We seen the same things. You know, might have did some of the same stuff, you know, and all those things, but you just got to take that. You just got to take that chance and take risk and just make it happen by any means necessary. And it'll play out like it's supposed to play out, as long as you stay consistent, as long as you stay on the right path mentally, and don't let anybody sway you off. Don't anybody, you know, rain on your parade. Whether it's your mama, your daddy, your brother, your auntie, your uncle. Don't let none of them, just because they don't understand it and they don't have the perspective to understand how valuable it could be, because their lack of their exposure, you know, go through with it. And I'm telling you, they'll be your biggest supporters at the end of the day. You're gonna be talked about at all the cookouts and barbecues and all the powwows. They're gonna be talking about it. So that would be my advice I would give.
Awesome.
Cousin Rome. Yeah, I echo what Jerome is saying. Evaporate all those raindrops of doubt that you might have that might be keeping you from applying and trying out these different opportunities, because there are really a lot out there at the end of this event. You know, we're going to share with you guys some specific resources, but I think it's important that you guys know that there's a variety out there. It's not just opportunities to teach. There's opportunities to volunteer. There's opportunities for people who are in business. There's opportunities for people who are interested in the environment, commerce, so on and so forth. And there's also opportunities that are that are different based on time. Some are jobs, like full-time jobs, where you're there for a year contract, 3-year contract, longevity. Others you're there for a couple months, maybe just the summer. So there's different opportunities out there that could fit for your life. They even have opportunities out there that'll make accommodations for your family if you have a spouse or dependents. So a lot of those opportunities, you know, some of those resources to help you start searching through will be available. We'll talk about it a little bit later on, but I just want you to know of the variety out there. I know me myself, I'm taking advantage of one of them. I'm going to Cartagena this summer in Colombia, and I'm gonna be there. I've been studying Spanish for the past 2 years, and I've wanted to be a part of this private school in Cartagena for a long time now. I've been talking with someone over LinkedIn, which also great resource for getting in touch with like-minded individuals on a global scale. But I know that I can't just up and leave and just go there and be there for a whole year. So I'm looking for programs that are specifically for the times that I can make time for within my schedule, within my life. So I think that's one that's the most important thing, advice that I think I'd like to share with you guys.
Laura?
Yeah, as I'm listening to Jerome and Terrence, like one of the main reasons why I decided to go to the Peace Corps was when I would speak to people about Peace Corps, they would respond, "Oh, I always wanted to do that, but never got the chance to. I always wanted to do that, but never got the chance to." And I'm like, I don't want to say that.
Mm.
I don't want to be the person that comes across an opportunity and don't pursue it and then look back years later and say, you know what? I almost had the opportunity to do that, but I didn't get to do that. So that guiding principle guides my life in terms of taking advantage of opportunities. And the passport is a powerful tool. It's not impossible to just go to the post office and fill out the application and save your coins, you know, and get yourself a passport and give yourself the opportunity to leave your comfort zone. And maybe just maybe going overseas is a little bit intimidating right now. Maybe just leaving your community. Maybe just going to a different side of town and meeting some new people from a different culture. And then you may interact with somebody and say, you know what, I'm from Senegal. You know, you should try this dish. And then next thing you know, you're in Senegal a year later, meeting that person. And that's how life happens. So my advice would be take advantage of opportunity for cultural exchange. You can have those opportunities right in your own backyard and get a passport. The world is slowly opening back up again now, and I'm excited to get to traveling again. But what travel does, it expands your perspective. It gets you to see yourself differently. It gets you to see your world differently. It gave me a greater love for humanity because the more I traveled, the more I realized that we're all the same, that we're different. And really having those experiences, I think, groomed me into kind of a global citizen, how to think about local issues globally and feeling a larger connection with the world. So traveling does that, and it's like as soon as you travel, it's one of those things that you can't necessarily read about. You have to do it, and once you have that experience that transforms your life, it's contagious. You want to continue to pursue that.
Yeah, and like Jerome said, unstoppable.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
how much? Hey, look, how much is a passport nowadays? What, 130?
Not even, I think it's like 100. Like 100, 110, I think.
Some people spend that on shoes, clothes, food. So look, because people always talk, hey, just don't eat out for a week and go get your passport.
There you go. There you go. No, you're absolutely right.
Absolutely. Costco, BJ's,
Don't even get started. Yeah, I mean, I always say like money sometimes can be the easiest excuse. Yeah, money is can be a barrier, is a barrier, but it's just like there's things that you can do. There's so many, like Jerome was saying, you can Google and find resources out there. There's so many passport programs out there. You do enough digging, money becomes a barrier, but not a big one, right? And a lot of times it's masking the fear. It's masking that fact that we don't, stepping out of our comfort zone is scary. And so I have one more question, and then I do want to ask, there was one question that came through in the chat, but I do want to ask you all, yeah, right, money's out there, we just have to find it. So what advice would you have? Because I know a lot of you talked about, the role of the mentors that were in your life, or the seeking out support systems or like-minded folks. So what advice would you have to any institution or entity or organization on how to make these opportunities more available, possible, accessible to more young Black male students at their institutions or campuses?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that. I think there's power in partnerships. Um, Institutions and universities can work with organizations like the Diaspora Store, or thinking about what Jerome's working on, or LFW, and beginning to create pipelines and looking more holistically at at what's at stake. When you look at the underrepresentation of Black males in study abroad, or who, or who take advantage of these opportunities, you have to look at it from the perspective of there are a lot of obstacles or barriers, both externally and internally, that get in the way of preventing a person, a young Black male, from taking advantage of an opportunity. And when they see an application open up, or for LFW or for Peace Corps, all of the narratives that have been a part of their upbringing, their environment, shape how they then interpret that opportunity, and whether they see themselves as being a part of that. So as, for institutions, I think one, exposure is important. Having folks who look like them, who can speak to the experiences, matter. Also, institutions investing in the pipelining programming. It's so easy to want results without necessarily investing in the resources needed to create the outcome. And I think the more holistically institutions look at these issues, and not just checking a box off of metrics, but actually investing in the programming and looking at sustainability and long-term growth, I then think we can bridge the gap between students who don't currently take advantage of these resources and opportunities, and getting them um, into opportunities like Peace Corps or LFW, or having them see that they can create their own Peace Corps or LFW one day, kind of thing. So I definitely think through the pipeline partnership model, that can be addressed.
Terrence, Jerome, what advice would you have for institutions for making these pathways more accessible?
The first thing I would advise them is they need to reach out to all three of us and book us for speaking engagements to all of their, programming, classrooms, whatever it may be, right after this Zoom call, this Zoom event. One, that's the first step. But secondly,
representation matters. Yep.
Right. But I think honestly though, I don't know if I can say it any better than what LeVar said. It's just institutions need to invest in individuals and Black men like us and others, in building the programs that we have. And just let's be honest, every institution don't have the representation of the personnel to go talk to all Black men in all areas and demographics. They just don't have it. They're gonna get easily ignored, or just can't communicate and talk the language they need to talk to get through them, right? It just don't happen. And I know as a person that was 16, 17, it's just certain people, it's just, you didn't really come off line and feel you the same vibe. It's just like, what can you tell me? We live two different lives. We have two different experiences, right? So I think, thinking outside the box on that, and bringing in Black men that have just a variety of experiences and living experiences and backgrounds to talk to different groups of other young Black men, young Black adults, that may be interested in going abroad. Because I know now I can definitely walk into a room of young Black men, and I can give them my background story, and they can say, "Oh man, if he can do it, if he can come up like that, then I can do it too." Then he kind of look like me, kind of sound like me, kind of dress like me. It seems like those things matter, and I think institutions need to look at that, especially when it comes to Black males in the United States, a lot more. And again, it takes organized people and organized money, right? And so we might have the people in our programs in the capacity building, but a lot of times we don't have the money to expand beyond. And so that investment from other institutions that are bigger, that are trying to diversify, that are claiming to diversify, that are claiming to want to get more people of color, more specifically Black men and Black women involved in their programs, work with organizations and people like us on this panel, and we can make it happen for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jerome. Terrence?
As an educator, I'm definitely echoing the the push for the fact that education matters, and I think education is one of the most important parts of getting these initiatives together, and any mission that's going to bring more young men overseas, and to experience more broader opportunities. And that could start with bringing individuals like myself, Jerome, and LeVar to your organizations, to your meetings, to your seminars, so we can continue to spread the word spread the word and inspiration and the impacts as much as possible to as many as possible, so that we continue to reiterate the idea that it's possible and that it can get done. Secondly, I would say, I think what a lot of institutions struggle with is trying to, like, when it comes to getting the resources together to make the initiative successful, they look locally, or they look within the states. There are a lot of, and I reiterate what I mentioned earlier. I've met throughout this pandemic, I've met and had the opportunity of being a part of several organizations and individuals who are overseas, who are involved in areas that I'm interested in, and the consensus I'm always getting from them is that they want more of us over there. They want us to come over and help with project after project. They want more American teachers. They want more American farmers and knowledgeable individuals in a variety of different career fields to come over and share what they know and bring what they can. And they're willing to use their resources to help you get over there. My friend was just telling me how there's a private school in Nigeria that I write a curriculum for just about every summer, and he was telling me how his organization is helping people with their visas, so that it's easier for them to get into Nigeria for long periods of stay. So they're helping in their own different ways. But a good way to reach out to them is to utilize some of these modern ways of international communication, such as LinkedIn, these social media pages like Facebook, and a platform that I've grown to really love recently called Clubhouse. I've met so many individuals on that space and overseas, and who have resources, and they have opportunities that are just waiting to be taken advantage of. But they're looking for the right institutions to work with and partner with, and they're always asking me who should they talk to and whatnot. So I keep those names in the back of my head and those emails in the back of my head. But I encourage these institutions to get modern and meet us where we're at, because that's where we're at. We're in those spaces. You're gonna reach a lot of if your target audience is young Black men, you're gonna run across a lot of us in those global communication spaces.
Thanks, Terrence. And so we did have one question that came through the chat that we actually didn't touch on very much tonight. But what was it like when you all were returning? I mean, I definitely remember what LeVar was like when he was coming back. So talk about your experiences after going out and being abroad and having this experience that's very different than maybe the folks around you. What was that like for you? I want to make sure I'm getting the question right. How was your return home? Were you able to relate easily to those friends and family members you returned to, or was it difficult since you had an opportunity to experience other parts of the world?
I can start. It was extremely hard. Actually, I had to go to therapy because the reverse culture shock is so real. And I think that's why, when you complete 2 years of service, and if you plan to extend, Peace Corps requires you to come home, because you begin to really adapt to the culture there. And when I got back to New York City, it was really overwhelming, because it felt like my 2 years of Rwanda, like life had slowed down tremendously. I got to do a lot of introspection. I got to really do meaningful, purposeful work. And I get back and everyone is just like busy. Things are happening so quickly. Everything is about the dollar. And I'm like, man, like, can we just have a conversation? I had this experience in the village, last month, and no one can relate to it. And it seemed, I don't know if y'all experienced this, but it seemed like more people was interested in my experience while I was away than when I got back. And it was like, all right, you're back now, kind of like get over it kind of thing. You're here now. It's time for you to get a job and, start making money again. So it was really difficult to readjust.
You got back and they were like, you still talking
Uh,
about that?
I echo the same struggles. I definitely needed therapy. I definitely struggled. Well, I came back a little sloppy. So I came back and I struggled a lot economically. But I guess like on a social aspect, it was difficult readjusting to American culture because just for record, I was vegan the whole time I was there. But the way I was eating was so different because meat is very expensive in my village, and I didn't leave my village often. And when I did leave my village, I'm a very cheap man, so I wasn't spending a lot in Kigali. Kigali is like the more modernized city. So I ate nothing but vegetables, fruits, and grain the entire time. And when I get back, I saw that Popeye's chicken in the airport. Just like health wise, everything just kind of flip flop, and there was no transition into that. And I wasn't also coming back from not just being in Rwanda, but being around so many like-minded individuals who were constantly thinking of new ways to better communities, and were also interested in civic engagement and community organizing and education. And then I come back and I'm not around those people anymore. And I'm back, around the original friends, the original family members, and they still talk about the same stuff before when I left. And it's exhausting. I struggled to find that group again of people that I like to be around and inspire and talk, because we would be in our compound in Rwanda and just talk for hours about ways to help people in our community back home, ways to better our career, ways to gain new skills. People were teaching me how to code. I was learning a new language. Like it was such an inspiring circle to be around. So I struggled for a while to find that group again, and those groups again. But so social media helped a lot with that.
Yeah, I really haven't really reflected on this a lot, because when I came back, when I returned from Paraguay, I was like, I gotta get to it. Like I gotta figure out how I'm gonna use this experience, because I'm coming out the dirt, out the mud. I'm coming, I gotta hustle. I didn't even have time to think about what everybody else is doing. I gotta figure something out. But I did have a moment though, and not maybe maybe less than a year after my Peace Corps service, I went right back abroad too. But when I was home, I'm back. People like kind of what Terrence was saying. People talking about the same stuff. Ain't nothing really changed. People still, the same topics are the same topics. And I was at the doctor's office, and I was just sitting waiting in the waiting room, and there was some other Black folks to be specific. And I was just eavesdropping on what they was talking about. And what they was talking about was just so, like, in my opinion, meaningless. And I realized, like, man, people just don't know, like, it's more beyond this. It's like a lot more beyond this. And I think at that point also, like, I was like, man, I gotta create something here in Nashville. I gotta do something to like help people get more exposure to like things just beyond this, and specifically Black folks. Just beyond this, because again, like I was the only one that I knew in my immediate family and my immediate community in North Nashville, like that have done the things that I like through Peace Corps and had that experience. So it would be cool for like to share there, ask questions, man, how was, and especially, my guy friends, like, man, what was the women like? You know what? You know, they asking those type of, they ain't asking about what you did, who you helped. They on some other stuff, right? And so it'll be those type of conversations. But I did find though too, like a lot of stuff, like I just didn't share because, you know, like how relatable can it be? You know what I'm saying? How those conversations. So I was just going and just really putting myself entrenched back in the community to continue to serve in some type of capacity before I left and went to Costa Rica and then went to China. And then once people kept saying it was a repetitive thing, like they just knew like what time it was. But I also knew I needed to do something here back home and to get more people exposed, and starting with the youth was the best way to do it, in my opinion, to do that. And so yeah, like it just, but it's definitely like, you know, you definitely see like a perspective gap, like just in conversation. And you know, it's sad to say, but just the people that's in my community, you know, in a mindset, I know that it's only so highly I could personally talk about my experience, because how it may make them feel internally. And then they might think I'm just kind of, you know, for lack of a better word, like shitting on their life and what they doing. And they might see me as an opposition at that point. It's sad to say, but that's like, those are some of the type of human being things that I grew up around, that I come up around. So if they didn't really engage me and really want to know, I didn't go too deep into it and get into and embellishing it too much, because I didn't want them to feel some type of way and comparing my life that I was living in my journey to theirs. And you know, that could be something that it shouldn't have to be, but that's a reality a lot of times. So
thank you all for that. And thank you for Tamara for asking that question. So we are almost at time. We said we were gonna end this thing at 7:30. And so I did want to make sure that I shared the document that had some resources on it, information, international education and experience resources. So some of it is directly related to, oh, we lost the bar. Some of it is directly related to study abroad. Or just any type of education abroad. Some of it is volunteer experience and just kind of like resources for where to get scholarships, things like that. And I'm actually going to add the contact information and tags, social media tags and everything like that for all the organizations onto that document. We had it in like the last slide as well, but I think that might be also better to have that there. So everything in one place. But yeah, thank you all for coming. Oh, awesome. You can also drop your email address in the thing too. So thank you all for coming. This has been a really amazing discussion, and just hearing the perspectives and hearing about not only, you know, you all's journey going there when you came back, but also just how important mindset and support systems and mentorship is in making this possible. You know, one of the things that we have, you know, acknowledged in the work that we're doing is that there's just not a whole lot of Black men when it comes to international leadership and senior leadership too as well. And so we want to work to change that, and through, you know, resources or opportunities and featuring different journeys like this, is giving more of our young men the opportunity to see that this is something they can do. These pathways are for them, you know, be it Peace Corps, be it some other way, that this is part of, you know, your right as well to travel the world, to leave, you know, have new experiences, have different cultural exchange. Yeah. So anything, any last thing y'all want to say on that in closing? Thank you for joining. Yes.
I appreciate y'all putting this on. Appreciate you, Ruby, LeVar, leaders of the free world. I appreciate y'all and everybody that came out and listened. And I hope y'all got something from it. I hope I was able to share something inspiring. And it was good listening to LeVar's story and Sharon's story. And we locked in. We brothers for life now.
Yes. Awesome. Cool.
Yes, thanks for having me in this space. If anyone ever want to reach out to me and ask me about any opportunities, I'm always looking myself for opportunities, and opportunities are always somehow ended up in my email. So if you ever want to reach out to me about anything in particular that you might be thinking about as it pertains to careers overseas, My email is in the chat.
Awesome. And
Also,
I'm also gonna,
dsbookstore.org.
yes, yes, yes. And so I'm gonna make sure on that document that I'll share, it'll have all of you guys email addresses, your social media tags, and your websites, so folks can reach out and follow up as well. So cool. All
Yeah,
right,
thank you.
everybody.
Oh,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, no problem. I just want to thank Terrence and Jerome for answering the call to be a part of this panel.
Yes.
Visibility matters. And, hearing your stories inspired me. I'm sure it inspired many of the participants who joined the webinar. So thank you to everyone who signed up for the webinar. And just, I'm walking away with optimism and hope, knowing that, it's webinars and conversations like this that break another mental limitation that a student may have about what's possible for themselves, and how organizations and institutions can do a better job in creating access to international experiences. So this was amazing. And did you want to share anything else that's
No,
upcoming?
I'm just going to say, hopefully, I hope you all will join us for our next webinar. And a big thank you also to our sponsors, NJCU and University of Delaware. So thank you.
Yes.
That's it. Bye, everybody.